I write to dream my way out of a reality that feels too cramped, cramped by noise, filth, unwanted people, and a gap between two worlds that seems far too wide. I write to fight demons that threaten to overtake me. Nightmares creep in every opening, but words will force them away. I write to express a soul deeper, stronger, more colorful than shows on the surface. Brilliant hues splash across my page, unfettered, unbound, unending. I write to rid myself of words, words that spin and tumble around in my head, causing confusion, irritation, anger, and distrust. I write for humor, to make myself laugh. The lines on my face will not all be from tears. I write for beauty. Sometimes in the middle of the night or during an awful commute, a sentence or word presents itself, and the sheer voluptuous beauty of it nearly makes me cry. I write because I exist, and I cannot imagine a reality without it. I write because the conversation in line at the grocery store is too delicious not to copy. I write because my nieces and nephews and cats make me laugh and smile and sing. I write because I loathe my neighbors and I refuse to own a gun, so I have to murder them in stories. I write because I was born. I write because one day I will die. I write because I am sick and tired of waking up every morning and feeling utter despair when I look at the day ahead. I write because there's nothing else to do with my morning coffee. I write because I'm a rabid insomniac. I write because my dearest friend in all the world lives way too far away and I miss her. I write because my soul is screaming and it's the only way to get it to stop. I write because I am a writer and it is what I was born to do.
Thank you for joining us today on The Flowers and the Wild. I am your host, Ajna Flowers, and with me is, actually, I am your co-host today because this episode is titled Becoming Ravena Wyld. So with me today, or I'm with her today, our host, Ravena Wyld.
Welcome. So nice to be here with you. So the piece of writing that I just read was actually a result of a school assignment while I was in undergrad earning my degree in 19th century literature. A very useful degree, by the way, and and also creative writing. And that is an assignment that was done based off of another writer who posed the question to everybody: why do you do what you do? Why do you write? What
And when you
has
sent that to me, Ravena, something about, you said to me this was a school project. So, it's not one of my heartfelt favorites, but it's one of my favorites. And I was like, there was something about that writing that lived inside me when I read it. And so I just really felt like that was why it was so important for us to share that here on the podcast and as a lead in to this amazing at least three-part series of Becoming Ravena Wyld. So I'm so grateful and so blessed to have you in my life. And I just want to tell you how amazing and proud you should be, how amazed and proud you should be that you are opening yourself up like this and being raw and authentic and real and sharing your life with people as a survival guide. So I cannot thank you enough for being willing to just open up and give help to people who feel like maybe there just is no way to end up becoming whoever their Ravena Wyld is.
Well, it's been quite a journey. For example, when I wrote that piece, I was in a very bad place. My marriage was falling apart. I was coming to the realization that the man that I had married was not who he said he was, and it was turning into quite an abusive situation. in addition to that, I was just unbelievably exhausted all the time. And part of that was because I hadn't yet been diagnosed with MS, but it was there already. I was already having symptoms and problems. And fatigue
And
is
the
a,
something was not right.
yes, exactly. Um, and fatigue is a huge part of that, which was probably the worst symptom that I had in the very beginning. Still something that I struggle with the most, to be honest. But at that time, I was still working full time and going to school full time. Plus, I had a lot of stress at home with my husband. I should note that in addition to all of that, he was autistic, and that presented a lot of challenges, both
Right.
just in our interaction day to day and in the way I was able to handle my life.
Right. And I'm sure that when you look back, like on the MS,
Mm-hmm.
your body whispered first. There were
It
little
did.
whispers of something isn't right. And then it started to talk to you. And it's like, this is getting harder to ignore whatever's going on. And then all of a sudden, your body screamed. And it was absolutely in emergency, critical condition at that point because
Yes,
we don't listen to the whisper. We try to pretend like we don't hear the talk. And then when it screams, we have no choice but to address it because we have no other option at that point.
exactly. It got to the point where I ended up. I mean, initially it was just something like, my leg was shaking and I was having trouble standing up. So then I got to the point where I didn't do things in school anymore that required a lot of walking or standing or um, being in line, for example. But I was ignoring it. At the time I lived in Seattle, Washington, and for people not familiar with the landscape there, it's basically vertical hills. No matter
Right.
where you are in town, you are climbing a hill. And I didn't have a car at the time, so I was required to ride the bus and do a lot of walking, climbing these hills, and it was getting so difficult. I mean, my legs, they felt like they were full of lead.
Right.
And trying to walk around town that way was just almost impossible, but somehow
Right.
I
And
made
I'm sure
myself do it, you
Oh,
know.
right. And I'm sure at some point you were like, well, my marriage is falling apart. I'm working like crazy. I'm going to school. I have these vertical hills. So I'm sure at one point you even attributed all of this to that stress potentially manifesting physically in your
Yes,
body. And if you could just get yourself where you were not so stressed and your schedule wasn't so heavy and your marriage wasn't so bad, then all of these symptoms would go away because that's what we
exactly.
do too. It's like instead of paying attention to this isn't right, it's like, well, these things in my life aren't right. So that probably is why it's like this.
Definitely. Most definitely. And I really honestly thought that all of the physical difficulties I was having were caused by the fact that I was just tired, because I didn't sleep.
Right.
And um I thought, if I could just get a good night's sleep, I'll be okay. And I can keep pushing. And I did. I kept pushing. I pushed and pushed and pushed until
Right.
eventually I started falling at work and collapsing. And I pushed myself right into the hospital
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4
Because it
times.
screams, and when your body screams, it's like you literally are helpless at that
Yes,
point to do
yes,
anything other than have somebody get you the help you need right then and there, ASAP.
right, for sure. And for me, it was a little bit, it was even more challenging given who I was married to.
Well, you just
Um,
had that dread, a dread.
yeah,
Just you just had this mist of dread that hung over because you've shared with me about like when you would go, you'd leave and you'd feel this heaviness lift, and you'd feel like for that time that you were away from your home, your house, it was not a home, it was a house,
it was the house.
that you felt lighter. And then as soon as you would get to the point where you would feel that shift of that mist, that fog of dread, just fall over that whole area, engulf you, And then
Mm-hmm.
their whole evening would be spent in that fog of what's going to happen. How's he going to be tonight? Is he going to just ignore me? Which at this point, yeah, but that also
Yeah,
hurts me. Or is he going to pay attention to me in a way that I know is not going to be something that makes me feel very good about myself or my life or my marriage? So
exactly.
I
Yeah,
think you just
it was this
resided
flat.
in this place of limbo between dread and lightness that you never could capture that light completely.
Oh, absolutely. There was like this black, I call it a black psychic goo, because that's really what it was, you know, and I got, it got so thick that I could see it just like dripping off the walls. It took time for it to build up that much, but it was just this nasty, almost sticky looking
And a smell.
goo and a smell.
And,
Well, the smell was actually very real. The
right,
smell
but
was very real.
it did play into that goo.
It did, definitely.
That was
You
very
know,
much representative of that goo, that
yes,
smell in your house.
yes, and well, and the house itself was also a um, difficult place to live, especially for somebody who was experiencing as many health crises as I was. Before I get into this too far, I do want to say that that what I'm about to say could be triggering for some people.
Yes.
Um, so you know, do use discretion if um, it feels like it's the wrong topic for you to listen to, then you know, of course, we understand if you sign off.
And
But
also, with that trigger warning, if there is someone that is listening that does feel triggered by this, but you are past the point of pushing it back down, and you really want to delve into how Ravena has used her trauma to heal, please leave a comment. Let us know that you want to talk to us further, and we will reach out to you. And Ravena
yes,
can talk to you. I can talk to you. We can do any kind of Zoom. I mean, we're willing to help anyone outside of the podcast that might need to just kind of talk and understand
yes,
understand that you
yes,
can heal through that trauma.
absolutely. Having said that though, I do also want to reiterate, I personally am not a licensed counselor or anything like that. So if you are
Nor am I.
experiencing, yeah, if you are experiencing the type of trauma where you do need somebody who has the education and everything, please, you know, please go do that for yourself.
Right. And if you don't know where to go, also you can reach out to us and we can give you
Definitely.
resources. So we can be a wealth of knowledge and resources for you. We need to know that you need those. So please
Right.
reach out to
Absolutely.
us.
Absolutely. So I guess what I was going to start discussing was the home that I lived in. Um, my husband, as I mentioned, was and he's passed away now, which is why I speak in the past tense. But he was autistic. He also had a lot of other psychological traits that I'm not sure what exactly they pointed toward, but they were not healthy. He was very depressed and just a very difficult man, because he was so angry and he let his anger kind of engulf him and everything that he did. So the home that we lived in, you know, in addition to just being emotionally difficult to be in, he was a very, very, very heavy smoker. And I have COPD and asthma and other health issues. And so it was very hard for me to be in that environment constantly. And we had a lot of difficulty navigating that because he would not go outside. He would not take it outside. And so I was living, breathing all of that, which was really hard for me. In addition to that, he would not let me clean anything because he didn't, and this might have been the autism, I'm not sure. Um, but he didn't want any of his stuff touched or moved or changed. I couldn't change anything in the house. So eventually, it just became a house of
A
horror.
very hard place and I'm sure you just felt dirty even after you
It
showered
did.
and
It
that
did.
house.
Yeah. There was, I mean, it was infested with, um, this is a feeling. It will pass.
Just a
It's just a
thought. You're
memory.
just a memory.
Um, but it was infested with ants, with all kinds of other vermin. We live near a forest, so frequently we would have mice, and I'm positive that there were other things that were living, under the house. And he was also
Safe
a
and you're
hoarder.
protected, Ravena. It is just a thought, and you are safe and you are protected. If you need to take a little breath, go ahead. I would take a deep breath in and just let it out, and then you'll be fine. You're doing amazing.
I haven't revisited this for a while, so
Doing fantastic. So proud. And you should be too.
oh, thank you. It's a little difficult to think about, but it's also very important.
Well,
There's a
safe.
reason I want to share this.
What we were going to share today, but this feels like exactly what you need to share.
Yeah, it was because of the piece of writing I shared, because this was what was all happening when I wrote that.
Do you feel pretty good now to go ahead and go ahead
Yes,
now?
yes,
Okay,
yeah,
perfect. Let's do this now.
yeah. So when I was writing that piece, um, I was thinking about what is it that I need to do in order to survive this life that I have for myself,
Right.
that I have chosen and have built for myself, that I don't feel that I can escape right now, because that was the biggest challenge for me during all of that, was that I didn't feel that there was a way out. I knew I wasn't happy. I knew that I was slowly dying, both spiritually and mentally and physically, but I couldn't figure out. I was fairly young still. I was in my 20s,
Oh,
early 30s, and I
yeah,
didn't
that is
feel.
young. That is young.
Yeah, I really honestly could not see how to change.
Right.
I felt responsible for him because he depended on me. He didn't work, so all of our um, livelihood was dependent on me,
And you
which
had
was
two
another
jobs
reason.
and were going to school at one time, right?
Yeah, I had multiple jobs and I was going to school full time. Um, and that was one of the reasons why I felt like I couldn't really listen to what my body was saying, um,
Exactly.
because I had to go to work. Because if I didn't go to work, we couldn't pay the mortgage. We couldn't
Well,
buy.
and like you have those responsibilities. I'm sure that there are like parents out there that feel
Yes,
that same way, that it's like, I have nothing to give, but I have no other choice because
right.
this is my responsibility. And you go into those things already depleted, and
Yes,
then they deplete you more. And then when you don't have something outside of that to help fill you back up, or you don't know how to fill yourself back up, you end up using your own life force energy to help
definitely.
do the things that you're responsible for. And when you start relying on your own life force energy to keep things going, that's what gets your body to the point of screaming, because
Yeah,
that is not humanly possible to do.
exactly. Exactly. And it was
Immune disorders show up, and all these things, that because your body is trying to recover itself and it can't, because of the continuous onslaught of this dread and trauma and all of it, on top of what you've already experienced through your childhood.
yes. Yeah.
It just
Um
gets to the point where your whole system is just like, I'm fucking done.
yeah, and for me that's exactly what happened, because by the time I did finally, 20 years in, figure out how to get out, um I probably had maybe a month, maybe 2 months left, and I would have died. I will say that, very, not because I was going to hurt myself or anything like that, but because my body was just tired. It was done. I couldn't handle it
Right.
anymore. I couldn't live in that anymore. And I did finally, get out of that and move on. And that was when the healing really began. It was when I left that environment and started from the ground up figuring out again who I am. And that was how Ravena came to be. Back then I was Melinda. That was who I was. And that little girl was so hurt and so traumatized and so lost that I really had no choice. When I began healing, and quite honestly, for me, it didn't really start until after he passed away. Um, in
Because he
2000,
followed you, right? After
he
you, because
did.
you lived in Washington, in Seattle,
Yeah,
and then you moved to Rexburg, Idaho, correct?
correct.
How long after you moved to Rexburg did he show up?
I think it was about 9 months.
So you had
Um,
9 months of thinking that you had escaped and that your life was starting over, brand new. You could have a brand new start. And then you showed me that picture of when you had just found out that he had moved to
yeah,
Rexburg.
yeah. In fact, I don't know if there's a way on here to show that, but it might be interesting to put that out
I
there.
was thinking, I'll see when I'm editing if I'm able to add that picture in because it is haunting and awe-inspiring and just plain inspiring to see. To see, I mean, it just gives me, whatever my skin does when I feel that feeling.
And for me too, when I discovered that picture the other night, I was just completely floored. It didn't even look like me. I
Right. Well,
did
that's what I
not.
thought. Because when you sent it, I'm like, who is that?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, wow. And then I put together that collage for you of the
Hmm.
first time, the first color, those ones, and then Ravena, when Ravena showed up. And when I was like, oh, I can't wait for her to see this. And then I sent it to you, and you were like, your response to me was, wow, that's haunting. And so for a second, I was like, oh no, I should have
Yeah.
warned her. I should have, I should have done a trigger warning on this. Um, because I didn't live that haunting look. I didn't live it as that in you. I have my own pictures of that haunting look, as you've seen
Yeah.
from my own destructive things that happened. But um, yeah, I didn't even recognize you.
It was.
Even
Yeah.
though I knew from the beginning of when we first met, because Melinda actually, the way we first met was she purchased a wind chime. I made wind chimes,
Hmm.
and she purchased one of the wind chimes, and then we just kept talking after that. And very rarely did that happen with my customers. Um, but this was, I mean, that was the universe's way of being like, so you guys have been friends forever in every single lifetime, and now it's time to connect again.
Yes. Yes. And
It's
it
just
was
it's so amazing. But anyway,
such a blessing too.
yes, oh, absolutely.
So, um, yeah, quite honestly, that was mostly what I needed to talk about was just kind of the beginning of the transformation, I suppose, because it really was. It was a complete rebirth for me,
Oh,
and I'm not even just spiritually, although that was a big part of it, but that part came later. For me, it was figuring out who I was based on all of the little parts of myself that I had pushed down and given
that
away.
shadow. Yep, that
And
shadow.
yeah, exactly. And it was very difficult to come to the realization that even I didn't know who I was.
And you realize as you start doing that shadow, which we are going to start doing that every morning, we got a
Right.
shadow work journal
Yes.
that we're going to start working through. But when you start realizing what it is about yourself that you hid in that shadow, that's where the magic is. Those are the
Absolutely.
parts of you that make you special, that make you unique. And it's not even that someone said to you, that's not good about you. Even as little children, we perceive things not always correctly, but we perceive things in a way that says to our little minds, that behavior does not have a positive reaction.
Right.
So I will change that. Even if I feel that way, I won't react that way because I know that that causes some feeling I don't like to feel. And so
Exactly.
even as tiny children, we, as in our little child brains, we perceive this is bad, this is good. So if I do the good, I will always be in their favor.
Right. And uh, you know, when you start rebuilding or blossoming or awakening, however you want to refer to it,
Remembering, I think would be
remembering
really
remembering
remember.
is a perfect term. When you get to that point, it's so important to recognize that most of this stuff started when you were too young to understand the world
Right.
and
Well, one of the things
understand
I will
your,
say to you, go
yeah,
ahead, sorry.
exactly.
I know I'm
um,
an interrupter.
so am I.
What?
That's just
How
how we
would
talk.
I? Right.
um, but I do think that it's the term reparenting comes up a lot in popular culture.
And what
I'm
we
sorry,
talk
I'm
about
stuttering a
is
little bit. That is the MS. That is not anything that we're talking about. I do sometimes stutter, so that's part of the speech issue that I have. Um, but it was a term that I never really understood before, and it wasn't really until I started delving into figuring all of this stuff out that I realized exactly what it was, which was that Melinda was still this little, 5-year old that had been so hurt and wounded, and all of that trauma just continued on right up until I was 40 almost. But I never had the parenting that I needed. And that's not
right.
to say that my mom was a bad person or anything like that. It's just to say that um, I didn't have the guidance that I needed. And so,
Right. And I think oftentimes our parents didn't realize how we as little children were perceiving a situation.
exactly. Yeah.
You know,
And that
they
happened.
understood, they were taking care of it. But as little children watching this thing, like say, for instance, your dad with MS,
Mm,
watching that unfold before you, your mom was only able to comfort you from what she perceived when she
right.
saw it. So you as a little child did not perceive it in the same way that your mother did. You perceived it in a horribly scary, your whole life was changing into this chaos. And so your perception of that whole experience was never addressed because as parents,
Yeah, not really.
in that parent phase until you're not till your children are adults, you don't stop and think, how did my child as a child perceive that? And what did I do to correct any fallacies that they may have about this situation when they're a child, not when they're 40, that they
Right.
come to that realization. Because one
Exactly.
of the things you and I talk about is, I'll say to you, when you say, I don't know why this thing bothers me or why I have trouble asking for help. And I will say to you, what is the root? Because you have to find the root of how you react as an adult. You have to find the root of where that thinking started. And if
Hmm.
you start going back and tracing, you were told asking for help was rude.
Yes. Yeah. It wasn't
So
what
you were
polite little
never
girls did.
told, you were never told, don't ask for help. Specifically, you were told, if you need help and ask for it, you are rude. So, of course, you grew up thinking, I can't, even though I don't have it, I can probably be evicted. It is more important that other people don't think I'm rude than it is at this point for me to reach out to someone who has said to me, if you ever need help, do not hesitate to
Yeah.
reach out to me. because that was one of the shifts we talked about, that you had to get to the place that what you were afraid people were going to feel when you asked them had to become secondary
Uh-huh.
to your need at that
Yeah,
point, that you no longer are going to put other people's perceived reaction above your peace, well-being, or need. Period.
exactly. Yeah. And it really did come down to the realization that I cannot be responsible for how anybody else but me feels.
Exactly.
Nobody else's feelings, perceptions, emotions, whatever, are my responsibility. I don't have to fix
Exactly.
it. I don't have to control it. I don't have to do anything to change it,
Right.
unless that's something that I choose to do, you know, and
Absolutely.
it
Absolutely.
should not ever be a obligation, you know, which is
Right.
going back to my marriage. That's exactly what it was. He made me responsible for everything that happened in our lives,
If he
down
did
to
it,
the sorry, what?
even if he did it,
Yeah.
even if it was his own doing that caused the problem, he always found a way to blame you for
Oh, it was
why
always my
you
fault.
were responsible.
It was always my fault. Even if he recognized that it was something he did, it was still my fault for allowing it to happen, for betraying him. That became a huge thing in our relationship. Was when there was a line in that piece that I read about how I loathe my neighbors. That whole situation was horrific between the neighbors. There was a literal war between our entire neighborhood and us. Um, and it was largely due
That
to the
had to be
fact,
a feeling of dread also. That had to give you
yes,
that, oh crap, now I'm driving back into this neighborhood that literally is against us. That
the
sees our
moment,
car and is like, oh crap, they're bad. I'm sure
yeah,
you felt that way.
oh, definitely. I could tell how hated we were.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could tell that, I mean, well, first of all, they had put up signs throughout the neighborhood, um, about, how we hated animals and that kind of thing.
You guys?
Yeah, yeah, because of the way that he reacted to people allowing their animals to roam free and get into onto our property. He was
Gotcha.
making me call animal control every single time there was a stray dog or whatever that wandered onto our property. Um I remember this very clearly. I came home from work one time, and in my front yard there were two horses, like three goats, bunch of chickens, um, and a couple of kids even that I never had seen before and I didn't see after that day, just kind of wandering around our yard. And I go inside to our home, and he was literally in a fetal position in front of the window, on the
Wow.
floor, because he could not handle the fact that his defenses, which in this case were the property line, had been breached by all of these um, critters.
Wow.
And he actually he loved animals, he did, but it everything had to be on his terms.
Well, and it
Um,
sounded
and,
like you
and
got overwhelmed very easily.
he did, yeah, and that
Yeah.
is the autistic. That's the
Right.
autistic thing,
Right.
and was not within his control, and I don't blame him for that. Um, what caused problems though was the way that he wanted me to respond. And if I did not respond the way that he wanted me to respond, then I betrayed him. And that became a whole
Which then
war.
put you in an interesting position because what he wanted you to agree with wasn't anything you could agree with.
Well, yeah, and quite honestly, I didn't mind that the animals were coming over. I loved them. You know,
You're
I
like,
loved
okay,
seeing,
but they'll drop some eggs over here.
right, exactly. I loved the fact that there were horses in my yard and I didn't have to take
Right.
care of them. You know,
Which tells me that even though there was that goo, those animals knew your soul. Because
I
if
think
it had only been based on his reaction and his feeling, those animals would have not have stepped foot, or the children, in your yard. So even though you were being so oppressed by all of that, your radiance and light still was sending out a beacon to animals and children saying, I'm here. We might be like that, but I'm here.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me because,
It's true. Because
you know,
that's the
animals and
presence you
children,
give
they're,
everywhere you are.
yeah, they're, well, thank you. They're, that was the one source of light. In fact, in that whole time period where I was living there, the one thing that consistently made me laugh was, down the road. I don't know what property it was. I don't know who owned them, but down the road there were a couple of donkeys,
How cute.
and I actually didn't see them very often. Because, like I said, I don't know what house they lived in. Well, property. I'm sure they weren't going in the house, but um, although you never know. Um, but there were these donkeys that were out there, and I would hear them all the time. And that was my favorite sound in the whole world, was listening to these donkeys kind of talking back and forth to each other and braying. And it just it even now when I hear it, you know, I
Well, it
follow
was
it
little
into,
glimmers, how triggers are things that bring up bad things, and glimmers are unexpected joy, unexpected things that just give you
exactly.
instantaneous joy. And that's why, my sun catchers are called Ocean of Flowers sun glimmers, because when they send their, you know, rainbow through the room, that's what it does. Well,
Right,
anyway,
exactly.
Ravena, I just want to thank you so much for what you shared today. I love that you are here. I love that you have traversed this difficult, heartbreaking, beautiful journey, and we now are on this journey together again. I just want to thank you for being here at The Flowers and the Wild. I am your co-host, Ajna Flowers, with my beautiful host, Ravena Wyld. Please join us next week when we will continue on with the series Becoming Ravena, Part 2, and an update on my thumb. I did not go to the hospital because I was able to, do what they would have done. I thought at first that I had broken it because I do, and even still, I do have electrical shocks just shooting through it all the time. But then on further examination, I just think I damaged the nerves for sure. And I just had a piece of skin that actually was able to come off. So now it is merely a flesh wound that is full of electrical shocks all day. So I keep it, Jack
It's
has
full
done,
of
my husband has
magic.
done a great job. What was that?
It's full of magic. That's where your power comes from.
Exactly, but the nail has not changed at all, so I apparently missed the nail bed completely. So, it could have been much worse, but I also just want to call a little attention to the fact that when I talk about persisting in existing calm in all situations and allowing what's supposed to happen, that that is what I did last week. That is exactly the way that you do that, because this podcast is my soul. It's my heart and my soul. And not doing that last week would have broken my heart, and it would have made me feel like I kind of dropped the ball on what I have dedicated my life to do now. And it wasn't super painful, and I didn't see a lot of blood when it happened. So I just was like, you know what, this is what we're gonna do, because
I
we're gonna
still
do.
can't believe that you recorded the whole show that way. It
Well,
just,
honestly, neither can I.
I
Um,
had no idea that anything had even happened
but
until you told me.
I was just like,
So,
this is amazing, because I'm literally doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in a situation like this. And it's not like I was acting like I hadn't hurt myself. I literally forgot during that episode what had happened until I would raise my hand up and see the paper towel in my view.
right.
So, I mean, it was supposed to, it happened the way it was supposed to happen. So
Yeah.
anyway, like I said, once again, we want to thank you so much. And we just want to thank Ravena Wyld for being with us today and becoming Ravena Wyld. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for being here. Bye.
Bye bye.